We'll call the March 26th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. I just want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. And once again, we'd like to thank all the 567 people that came to the special town meeting last Tuesday and expressed their views on our purchase of the golf course. And thank you especially to all the people that, voted for it. And especially I want to thank, all, the staff that put a lot of time and effort into preparing for the town meeting, and especially our town administrator, who did all of the information sessions that ensured people, had plenty of opportunity to know, the reasons and the specifics of that purchase, and that helped make people comfortable in voting yes last Tuesday. So having said that, we'll move on with the warrant.
I'd also like to give a thank you to our acting town moderator. She stepped in an acting capacity in a town meeting that was going to be very large and a very big issue that folks wanted to be heard on. I think she did a great job, really good job.
And, lots of people, at the end of the meeting were commenting on, the job that Barbara did, in running that meeting, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
So Andy, the warrant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On warrant 1920 this week, we have $643,917 on payroll and $1,459,797 on bills payable. Of that, the usual payroll deductions this week in the amount of $78,209. Down the middle of that table, you'll see under DPW, $44,133 for the North Liberty Street culvert. That's primarily for design and survey work associated with the replacement of so-called Monday Bridge. We had $773,431 in power purchase for MELD, another $306,000 in deductions for the treasurer, this time for health insurance. And then at the very bottom of the page, $4,406 for Veterans Aid. I just want to mention, we've talked about it a little bit, I think, in some of the budget meetings that we've had. But Gary Bent, our Veteran Service Officer, has really done a great job of advocating for the vets, not only getting them whatever they're due under Section 115, which is the benefit amount that, or the benefit program that he distributes, but also in some cases getting people off of 115 and on to Social Security and other types of benefit programs where they actually do better. So he's really been a great advocate for our vets, and has really done a great job helping them out and picking up where Ted Butler left off. So just wanted to mention that. Sarah Wood has reviewed this and requests the board's affirmative action.
Are there any questions?
I got a quick one, Costa. Andy, what is the, across from accounting, it says the money for the tramp house and the flood and earthquake. What is the flood and earthquake?
That's all insurance.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we have to insure the tramp house as a vacant building. So it's any vacant building is insured differently than an occupied building. And then we added flood and earthquake insurance, and or the premium came in this month. I think we added cybersecurity this year.
Thanks.
That's all
Peter
insurance.
billed us for the new DPW truck.
Correct.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve warrant number 1920.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we also have minutes from our March 12th meeting. Are there any comments on that?
I make a motion that we approve the March 12th minutes as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Andy, your updates and reports.
Just a couple of things tonight, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you to everybody who showed up last Tuesday at the special town meeting. Really a great opportunity for the town to do some things for the town going forward. We'll talk about it more later on in the meeting. We'll also talk about town meeting later on, but the annual town meeting, which is May 14th, is followed a week later by the annual town election. We've still got a number of positions for which nobody has pulled papers. Papers are due back next Tuesday, April 2nd. So there's still time for anybody who would like to run for office, but who has not picked up papers yet. So anyone interested can talk to the town clerk's office and get some more information from them. I think I'm not sure if we have any contested races, and I know that we don't have candidates for a number of the spots, so we really need some people to step forward and pull papers. We're going to post some information on our website. There's been some information that went out to the board recently from Mass DOT, the Department of Transportation, regarding some work on Route 1. They're going to be rehabbing the Tobin Bridge and the Chelsea curves over the next 2 years. Work starts next week, so any Middleton residents that drive that section of road, you want to be mindful of that work. There's going to be a lot of inconvenience and a lot of detours and things like that. So
It'd be a nightmare.
yeah, so it's the first time in over 40 years that they've worked on that section of road, so it's time, but it's not going to be convenient. So we'll have information on our website. There'll be links to update pages through the DOT, so you'll be able to check on progress and detours and traffic conditions and things like that. And then finally, we've been, as the board members know, we've been rolling out our web-based permitting system, CitizenServe, over the last couple of years. We started with health and then went into plumbing first, I think, and Todd helped quite a bit with that. But so all the inspectional services pieces, health, beginning on April 1, planning and zoning board applications can be made online. So it's a convenient way for people to be able to apply for their permits, special permits, variances, whatever it happens to be. So it's all available through the portal on the town's website.
On the services that are already in there, do we know what percentage of the permit applications come through CitizenServe as opposed to people going in?
I don't. I can see if we can find that out and see how that breaks down.
Any other questions or comments?
No, but if I could just interrupt quickly, on the minutes, just realized I was absent for that, and I seconded that motion. I want to make sure that
You can still say them.
there's no, okay, thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to our first agenda item, which is a discussion regarding change of manager by Attorney Albert DiNapoli for Interstate Management Company LLC, DBA Doubletree North Shore, Boston, 11 Village Road, Middleton.
Good evening.
Good evening. So
I'm Al DiNapoli.
if you
Glad to be here.
could kind of walk us through the timeline from, when, the last manager left and, the trials and tribulations you've had in finding someone to succeed them.
Well, I was before this board in I think probably August of 2017 when we had a transfer of the liquor license there to Interstate Management Company. At that point, the manager was Eleanor Hargraves. We continued her under our employment as the manager of record, and she was with us until November of 2018. At that time, on November 2nd.
Can
I'm
I
sorry.
ask the date of November?
Well, I have a letter that I sent to this board dated November 2nd.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking this is because the application you submitted, the letter had a date on it, but the application the date on the application was, I don't know if it was purposeful or not, was blank. And there's been an ongoing history with this program, with this property of individuals leaving that are the license holder or the manager of record on the license, and then sometime later, an application coming to us for a change of manager and record. So what I'm trying to get to this evening is, when did the person leave the employment of
Sure.
the facility?
So in my letter to you, I said that, this was a November 2nd letter. I said, as of last week, she was no longer with the company. So that would have been the end of October 2018. And I notified this board a week later. Thing was, that was in November, and the renewal process for liquor licenses takes place by November 30th. So there was conversations that would wait for the renewal to be done and then submit an application for the new manager. There were some issues with some of the papers from the applications for renewal from the town itself. So that application was not done until December 3rd for the renewal. And that respectfully was something that was understood by the town, that would be after November 30th because of something with the renewal application. I'm not sure what it was, but I was in correspondence with the town repeatedly to make sure that we would be able to do that in a timely fashion. So we did that renewal on December 3rd. I filed the renewal, and on December 19th, I filed a change of manager from Ms. Hosgraves to Michael Woodcock. That application was sent on December 19th to the board, and got notice in Danvers of a hearing for January 22. I went to that hearing in Danvers. Danvers approved Mr. Woodcock. I didn't get a notice for a hearing in Middleton, and for some reason, not knowing what happened, but I did hear on the day of Tuesday, January 15th, that we were expected to be before the board. I had never received any notice by email or otherwise, so I contacted the town and asked what we could do with that situation, and we were given a new date. The new date was going to be March 12th, I believe. Let me just make sure I have that correct. I think that's...
March 12th is the date.
Sorry, pardon me?
March 12th is the date.
That was a meeting.
Okay, I know there was a snow day. Okay, so it was March 12th, and then on March 11th, there was exchange because there was snow predicted for March 12th. So you canceled the meeting. I was advised that that meeting was going to be canceled, so it was, and I asked Mr. Woodcock if he'd be available on February 26th. However, I had a conflict, so it was scheduled, like I said, for March 12th. So,
February.
I'm sorry, so
February
let me go back. I'm sorry, it was first scheduled for February 12th.
Yeah.
My apologies.
We just approved minutes of March 12th.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
so-
my apologies. It was scheduled for February 12th, and that's when there was a snow date. And they offered the date of February 26th, but I had a conflict, so it was scheduled for March 12th. On March 1st, I got a notice from my client that Mr. Woodcock, who had been approved by Danvers, but this board had not yet had the hearing to approve him, had given his 2-week notice. So on March 8th, I sent a letter a week later to the board saying that be advised that although we were supposed to be before the board on March 12th, Mr. Woodcock had given 2-week notice, that Ms. Kate Brill Daly, who's here with me tonight, had been named the general manager, and that we were going to be submitting an application for her. And I sent that overnight, the application last night, to the board, although I noticed that my letter that I sent last night was dated March 25th, 2018. I'm sorry, it should have been 2019. I missed that, trying in my haste to get it out before tonight's meeting. We don't have really sometimes control over the managers, and they choose to leave. It's nothing that Interstate had done in changing managers, but Mr. Woodcock had been approved by Danvers. He had worked in Boston for many years. We were happy to have him be here, but something must have changed with him, that he gave a 2 weeks' notice, and Kate Brill-Daly, who has worked with both Marriott and Interstate, and most recently out in Springfield, in the Marriott out there, has taken the position as general manager, and asking, once we get a date, to have appointment as the manager of record.
Did you receive the?
Yes, Michelle received it yesterday, so we have that, I think we have that penciled in for April 23rd.
We just heard from Danvers today, too, because we sent it to Danvers. We're going to be before then on April 2nd.
So I'm trying to get my arms around what happened here from a late October, early November departure of the manager of record to, I get that we had a snow date in here. I get that Mr. Woodcock had given his notice, which facilitated the need to remove the March 12th agenda item, but we're talking 6 months.
From what?
From 5 months from when this position was vacant until now. So what I'm confused is what happened back in November, December, that caused us to be at this point with 5 months with no approved manager of record. So I guess I'm confused.
I can, I don't know if more I can add, but like I
When
said, I
was-
gave notice on November 2nd, and the renewal was to take place by November 30th. We said to hold over until after the renewal. There was, like I said, some issues with the renewal. Wasn't completed by November 30th because the town had something that needed to put past that, and they would recognize it. So we filed our renewal on December 3rd, and then on December 19th, we filed the application for a change of manager.
When was Mr. Woodcock hired?
I
Hired.
Hired? He
Yeah.
was hired at the end of October. So right around the time, I'm only speaking, this is Kate.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to me. I was here 6 years ago, so I was here when Ira was here. I've come back for another tour of duty, and I held the liquor license back then. Yes, I recognize a lot of you. So to me, it's like coming home again, and I understand all your concerns. I know everything that happened prior. I was with Sage, I was with TPG. I was through many of the same things that you folks were through. So Michael was hired, so Elena was let go, then Michael was hired. So in the transfer of that process, yes, they should have let you know that there was a change there.
We did, on
but-
November 2nd.
Okay, so they did.
I just don't know if Michael
And
was
then,
hired the same
and
time.
then what happened was, the same thing happened in Danvers, because I got there just January 9th, and Danvers came, the police came with the liquor license, because I think there was such an unrest that nobody knew what was going on, and they came because nobody went to pick up the liquor license. And so, they handed me the liquor license and said, just so you know, and I was like, thank you, I've been here 2 days, I didn't know that somebody was supposed to go. So I think there was just, the general manager was let go, that's why they brought me back in, early January, and I know you like to be very cognizant of what's going on at the property, totally understand that. It's a, you know, it's a big operation up there that we try to be as, you know, as forthright with you. We want to be neighbors with you. So I am here because they actually asked me to come back up to the property on January 9th and start, you know, working through everything again. And that's why he's presented the liquor license.
I'm more confused because Mr. DiNapoli said on March 1st, Mr. Woodcock gave 2 weeks' notice, but you
Yes.
came back in January
I
to take over.
did, but I wasn't going to be on the liquor license
Okay,
at that point because Michael Woodcock was the AGM and he lives in the town. He lives in Beverly and they were going to put him on the liquor license. So I came in to be the general manager, not necessarily to go on the liquor
Okay.
license at that point in time
okay.
because that was set.
When were we first notified that Mr. Woodcock was going to be requested to be the manager of record for the liquor license?
12/19 was the, Mr. DiNapoli said was the change of,
His word on that, yeah.
Okay,
Manager.
so that is 12/19. He was hired at the end of October, and I assume when he was hired, of what you've told me, is he was being hired to replace an individual that had been removed from the role that was the license of record. So,
Who I gave notice of November 2nd had left.
but at that time, because I don't have that document in front of me, at that time when that notice was made, did it state that Mr. Woodcock would be the manager of record?
No, we didn't know at that point. We were in as I say in the letter, and I can give you a copy of it, that the manager director relative to the above referenced licensee is of last week no longer with the company. We're in the process of appointing a new manager who we expect to name soon. We will file with the board for approval once this process is completed. And as I said, because of the renewal process and whatever.
Well, you were
that-
renewing and you didn't know who, so I guess, as I understand, in the renewal process, you were renewing your license at the time on December 3rd that you did not know who the manager would be. Is that,
No, I won't say that's exactly true, okay? I think we did know that it would be Mr. Woodcock, but we were advised that because of the renewal process to do one step at a time, to renew the license, get that renewal done, and then go for a change of manager, which we did.
so I don't know how much of this was also our process. I guess what I'm concerned is that we were looking at an actual renewal that I assume had the name of the woman that was no longer an employee.
I believe that's the case, yes.
So.
Right, because it would have come in November when she was
Still.
still there.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was, part of it was a timing issue with our office.
And then from 12/19, when Mr. Woodcock was actually named as the manager that they were requesting on the license, this is where I think what you stated, that there was a lack of a notification, or you didn't know that there was hearing or whatever, and that may have well happened. However, we were now at this point looking at almost 2 months with a license that had been renewed for a name of somebody that we all knew wasn't there, including you all knew that wasn't there. And what didn't happen is, I would assume, as the attorney or as the general manager, someone would pick up the phone and call the town and say, hey, is there going to be a hearing on this request that we made on April 19th? Because I'm also going to go to past history. There's been a many year problem, both with the current owners and the previous owners of the property, of managers of record departing, and months later, us being, hey, we'd like to have a new manager of record. And I don't expect that when somebody is removed from the office, from the role, that 24 hours later, the first thing you're going to do is say, okay, Mary Jones or John Smith is going to be the manager of record. I don't expect there to be a boom, boom happen, unless you potentially have, this person we know is retiring or moving on to another facility you can have. But in the case of, I assume, happened, you didn't have that time frame. But what we didn't have was, until February, it looks like, what you believed was a notice on the 12th of a schedule, but needed to be moved because of a snow date. And now we're looking at April 23rd, when we'll actually have the public hearing, which is 6 months, 5 months after the woman left that Mr. Woodcock was originally determined in your shop to be the replacement. And that greatly concerns me, and I feel like we've gone all the way back to of old, of months without a manager of record.
Respectfully, we made every attempt to try to, put the manager, we've had 2 changes, in that time frame that you're talking about of 5 months. And, Danvers had scheduled the hearing after we filed the same papers with Danvers for Mr. Woodcock on January 22. So when January 15th came along, not hearing from Middleton, I said, well, we still haven't even, we're just going to Danvers next week. I will hear soon, and there must have been some kind of snafu. I mean, I don't know what to say. It wasn't something that we did intentionally to not appear before this board or to present it before the board. And then when we couldn't appear on January 15th, the next date that we could be available was unfortunately the snow day, February 12th. They put that over. I wasn't available on February 26th. I had a conflict because it was canceled on February 11th. I just happened to have something on the 26th. I couldn't make it, so it was on for March 12th. On March 2nd, Mr. Woodcock, was no longer with us. So I understand, your concern. I understand your inquiries. But please, be assured we're not trying to do anything to.
I think what his concern is, and I don't know your relationship with the hotel in chief. In other words, are you employed by this particular company at this particular time? Because what's going to happen, it's going to happen again, is that I understand managers leave, and there's a lot of stuff, and nobody thinks of anything. But we need you. If you're the permanent attorney, if you're going to be here, we need you to be the responsible party, because the hotel is not the responsible party because they're not, I don't mean that they're not responsible, I mean they haven't been responsible, because what happens is the person with all the knowledge just got kicked out the door. And so the new person's coming in, and they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about, hey, did payroll get paid? Who are we going to, what are we getting in this weekend? What conference is coming in? What's going on? The last thing they think of is, hey, geez, do we do the liquor license? So, I mean, I would have thought that you would have gotten the notice from Danvers and said, hey, I haven't heard from Middleton. And you know what? Given my history, Middleton gets pissed off a lot. Maybe I better check with Middleton, because
Well, I certainly will now. I didn't realize Middleton was going to get pissed off a lot, so my apologies.
She would know. The problem is that we tell every person that comes in here, and it's been a history, and they know, but you know what? They're gone in 6 months. So they don't care that Middleton's pissed off because they're gone. I need someone to care, because it's just an unending story, and I can appreciate it. It's the hotel business, but by the same token, there's a great liability out there, the fact that you've got no manager of record. From the hotel's perspective, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to come out too drunk. At that point, if we find out someone's overserved and there's no manager of record, you know how much money that's going to cost the hotel to not have a license for a while? It's going to cost. So somebody has to get notice and say, listen, and again, I don't know your status, but they better tell you, okay, you're on retainer for the liquor license for the next 5 years, no matter who owns it, because you're going to be responsible for it, because they're going to forget again. And the next time, this time, I'm not talking for anybody, but it get after a while, I feel like Charlie Brown, and I'm just like, yeah, Lucy's going to hold that ball, and I'm going to go kick it. And every time it's like, oh, the manager left. I understand that. You fire them. I don't know. It's none of my business why you fire them. But the first thing who's ever in charge better think of is, this is the person that has our liquor license. Okay, maybe at the same time we're firing it, we better call up the attorney and say, by the way, Johnny's being fired. We're kicking him out. So we need you to start going. It might be Woodcock, it might be anything, but maybe you better call the town and just keep them appraised of, hey, the current manager's out, we're just getting another manager. It's more of a conversation too, that just keep us in the loop. And I understand that, okay, maybe the paperwork didn't come or whatever, but in my mind, I do a little bit of licensing, And I follow up because I assume everybody's gonna screw up. I assume the ABCC is gonna screw up, it's gonna sit on their desk forever. You know what? I call them every 2 weeks, like, hey, where is it? Because I know that it's gonna go, it's important for my client to get the liquor license. I call the town, hey, did I give you everything? Is everything good? Do we have a date? There's a follow-up that goes on because for most of these businesses, I mean, I understand the hotel, the biggest business isn't the bar business, you know, it's the hotel, but for a restaurant and stuff, it's so important, and that's why there has to be checkup. But here, I mean, people treat this, and I gotta tell you, have a DoubleTree with functions and have no bar in Middleton. I don't even know which bar is in Danvers, but that's, you know, it's not gonna be a way to run a hotel.
Sure. I understand.
Yeah, I think, you know, we need to have some understanding of what happened between 12/19, when the change of manager application was submitted, and, you know, scheduled for for January 15th. Where was the breakdown in communication that they didn't know? Was,
And we'll take responsibility for that. I'll take responsibility for that.
okay,
We had a gap from 12/17, I think, to January 15th for meetings, because the normal meeting would have been January 1st. Obviously, we weren't going to meet then. But we dropped the ball there on the notice to Attorney DiNapoli.
So one of the things that I want to see when this comes before us on the 23rd is, a while ago, the decision was made, and it might be by the present owner or the previous owner of the facility, of having a different individual as the license holder. Because it was like a revolving door. Honestly, I've been on this board since, 2010. If I removed the number of times this property comes to us for either a license renewal, a license transfer, if I remove that from the mix, it's when a property sells in town, which is very infrequently, in our annual approval. This is probably, honestly, 75% of our license transfers, maybe more, is this facility. And I get that for a long period of time, the facility was a proving training ground for staff. I want to hear clearly on the 23rd what the process is going to be. That when the next vacancy happens, we have an internal process that says, this happens, this happens, this happens. As outside counsel, this is our role. Here is going to exactly what Selectman Hooton is saying. This is the role that I'm going to play, knowing that you may hit megabucks tomorrow and head off to the Caribbean and leave everything on your desk and say sayonara. That somebody has to be the person that says, oh yeah. Because honestly, the process was happening on Danvers, and while there may have been an error on our side on communication, we should have said, well, I have a hearing on Danvers, why haven't we been notified yet on Middleton? I want folks to be uber vigilant to focusing on this, because I will tell you, April 23rd will be the absolute last time that I, as one of 5 votes in this board, will entertain this, because I'm like a broken record on this. And I take this position of approving and voting in favor or in opposition of license transfers extremely, is an extremely important role of this board. I know ultimately your next stop and your final stop is ABCC, but I would argue we are the first line stop in this, and I get to see something different than I've seen now. And I'm not shooting the messenger, I'm delivering this clear message. I appreciate your back as the general manager, and I don't know if we need to just have a discussion again about the general manager being the holder of the license. And I'll leave that to you in your process of determining how you're gonna show us in the future that we're not gonna have a 6-month gap of.
and I think we need that sort of document or timeline or, you know, whatever, not from you, but from one of the managers of the LLC that owns the property or manages the property. Somebody higher up than the person at the facility, because that's the person that keeps revolving.
And I'm sorry, I just so I'm clear for when I come, The timeline, you meaning?
What
that
happened?
Once
Yes.
a manager of record left,
Yeah, well-
how soon I will be notified, or the attorney will be notified,
Yeah,
and how
who-
soon we will
yeah.
notify the board,
Yeah.
and how soon we'll get an application in.
Right.
And that needs to be done from one of the managers of Interstate Management Company LLC, one of the LLC managers.
Understand?
Anything else?
All set.
All right. Well, I hope they take, the message seriously, because, in the past, we have, suspended that license, held the suspension in abeyance, if, as long as there were no other errors in the process. And, if we need to, we'll do it again.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is a request by Eileen Twist to be appointed to the Scholarship Committee for a 3-year term.
Make that motion?
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next is a follow-up discussion of the March 19th special town meeting with discussion of the golf course management, master development, planning committee, designer selection. Andy?
So just wanted to update the board of what our next steps are, the board and the public, what our next steps are. So we got a few plates in the air with this now. We're going to have a conference call tomorrow with our financial advisors regarding the bond anticipation note that we'll be issuing, the short-term borrow. We're in the process of drafting the request for proposals for short-term operation of the golf course to see if there is actual interest in somebody coming in to operate the course. We've received direct or indirect inquiries from 2 different individuals or firms. So we want to shake that bush and see if there's anything to that. As I said the other night, there's the possibility at least that it would take the maintenance responsibilities off of us, if nothing else, as well as continue to provide a place for people to golf. So the timeline is very, very tight. I was talking to one of the managers of the LLC today, and this came up, and she said, well, before too long, we'd be doing the prep work to get open, and none of that will happen while they're still the owners, because there's no incentive for them to do that. We wouldn't be able to get somebody in place realistically until, I suppose the best case scenario would be end of, maybe the 23rd of April, if things went really well. And then I don't know how quickly somebody could mobilize.
Well, we may select on the 23rd, but they couldn't go in there until we close on the property, which will be
Correct.
sometime after that.
Yeah. So
What is our anticipated closing date?
we're shooting for May 1st. So while all that's going on, I distributed an excerpt out of the RFP yesterday to board members, so if there's any feedback on that, I'll take it, otherwise I'll just finalize it. We'll submit the legal ad this week to the Central Register and to the newspaper to get that process going. We have to advertise for 2 weeks, so that's a
Is it
in lag.
typical, one of the requirements is to have a golf pro.
Right.
Is the facility have one currently, and is that kind of a typical thing that you would?
And that's, I'm not a golfer. And so I don't know how critical that is. There is a pro there, I believe, right, Tim?
Yeah, he'll be
there was, historically there has been.
I see that he's moving on to different location.
Yeah, so, do we need that? I don't know. So maybe that's something that we can strike. Similarly, we don't want somebody to come in that doesn't have the financial wherewithal to do it, but we're not looking to cover our debt service costs, so maybe maybe the financial piece is not that critical.
So, a couple of things that I'd like to get an understanding of, and to Selectman Moreski's question earlier on our warrant on the tramp house insurance. So, once we take ownership on May 1st, there's going to be certain costs that we're going to be bearing immediately. One of them is obviously insuring under a process of if that does not operate in a short period of time, short-term period as a golf course, we would insure the facility, grounds, and building as
No.
vacant.
We just need liability insurance. We have no interest, in the,
So,
in the structure being, unlike the tramp house, which we have an interest in.
Well, but we
in the
also have
structure.
insurance somehow, I assume, probably just liability on the School Street property that is a vacant building, I would assume.
Correct.
So one of the things I'm trying to understand is what would our insurance costs be if it remains vacant until construction occurs on a liability and/or other level? And what would that carrying cost be if there is a company that comes in and operates for a 2-year period, for example, which is what we think is the likely time frame, but that's not a guarantee.
Right.
Likely not to be less than 2 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, and based on the seasons.
Correct.
Secondly, and what I think is in addition to continuing for a 1 or 2 year period of having the ability for Middleton residents in the area communities to have golfing continue in Middleton, I'd also like to understand what, we have a number that we're putting in the budget for our maintenance, i.e. Mowing, the commitment that we've made to both, not just the butters, but to the town overall, that's not gonna turn into some,
Forest.
Yeah, forest/meadow at some point. Now, I think we've been very clear, we're not gonna, if it stays not as a golf course, we're not gonna be mowing putting greens every day and
Correct.
and watering and fertilizing, as has been going on, but we're not gonna be, mowing it once every 3 months either. So I'd like to understand maintenance costs there versus if those are obviously borne by a management company that would be operating the golf course. And then lastly, and I didn't really see in the proposal the RFP that's being sent out, is what if we need to pick a date that states this is the date that we expect that we would like to break, that we're thinking we may be breaking ground. What I don't want to do is delay any construction because we're bound by certain dates on a golf course. Again, I'd love to keep this operational for a period of time just to reduce our costs and continue that, I guess, benefit to the townspeople that want to golf there. However, I'm more concerned about if town meeting gives us approval next November to build the first facility there, that we can stay on budget, because on time can help us stay on budget.
Right. So the insurance piece, if we don't lease the property out and we have to insure the buildings, it's a couple of $1,000s a year, the insurance. The insurance and the grounds. The maintenance costs,
Is there an insurance that we have to carry if this now is used and we are renting out the facility, regardless of what the revenue is?
Right,
There's,
so-
I assume, a certain liability insurance
So
that
the-
we will be carrying.
yes, and the firm whoever we hire would have to insure it.
But we would also have insurance.
Yeah, I think we'd have,
Do we have an idea of what that cost would be?
I don't.
Well,
should,
typically, when a landlord, rents a property on sort of the triple net basis, the tenant pays the insurance costs of the landlord. So, in this case, it would be great, if, that made, sense, but, they may come back, say, we'll run it, we'll mow it, and next that, but, we're only gonna give you $10, a season, and, forget, that's all we can afford.
Right.
So, we may have a tenant, but we still may have the insurance costs, even though ideally would pass that on.
Yeah. And so, and that depends on, are they gonna try to run the operation inside the clubhouse? Are they gonna come for a liquor license? Are they gonna serve food and all that business?
Well, we state in the RFP, at least the draft that you have, that the snack shop, not a liquor license, but the snack shop and the pro shop shall be operational.
Right. Again, that's one of the pieces that, I don't know how critical that is. I would assume it would help them to
Draw people.
draw people in, so. think
I
we
would
wanna
make
keep it.
that optional, so that, they can, yes, we'll operate the snack shop, the pro shop, but if all they want to do is basically pretty much keep the building shuttered and just, let people play golf and charge a fee, we'd have the option of looking at that too.
Yeah, okay. In terms of maintenance, we've put in a warrant article on the annual town meeting for a $25,000 appropriation for maintenance. We think that will get us most of the calendar year, just to keep it from turning into a meadow, turning into a forest. It's gonna be, fairly rough mowing. It's not gonna be tees and greens and fairways. So we would save that amount, and then the third, forgot what your third piece was.
Just the time frame to ensure that
Oh, the
we're
time
not,
frame. Yeah, so-
some years they're golfing in December there, and I just
Right.
want to make sure that we're not locking ourselves into, because at some point, prior to breaking ground, there's going to be engineering and surveying work that's going to happen, and I don't want to be
Right. And we will,
putting off our schedule for
we'll,
that.
we'll build that in so that we can go out and do any kind of geotechnical or survey work or whatever it happens to be that we need in order to do the master development study. So we're not gonna be, put off by the potential operation. And then we'll just have to pick a drop dead date. With the current owners, we had agreed to November 30th, which was the date that they wanted to go through in 2020. At worst, that would have cost us a month or two. It all depends on when we would have town meeting to do the appropriation and how quickly we would, where we would be in terms of ready to award contracts and how quickly the contractor could mobilize. So I think somewhere in probably November of 2020 is where we would still cut it off. Maybe it would be earlier in the month, or maybe it would be, we can shut it down as early as November 1 with 30 days' notice or something like that. And then we're also gonna build in a safety net in case our schedule doesn't hold. And, we, as I said at town meeting, the schedule that we laid out there assumes no slip-ups along the way, no delays. Everything happens that we get the master development plan done by, in time for fall 2019 town meeting. If that process goes a month or two longer than we expect, that kicks us into another construction season and changes things. So we'll build in, probably either 6-month or annual renewals
Okay.
of this contract.
And the right, and some right to cancel with a certain amount of notification, I assume on both sides.
Yeah.
I'm generally supportive, absolutely, of the concept of doing this. I think we're gonna have a pretty quick sprint, especially with the May 1st date that we take ownership. or at least anticipated date that we take in ownership, so.
Yeah, it's aggressive, so.
And they are in operation now, so it's not as if it's.
They
you
are, I
know,
went
they'd be
by
walking in on it
today or
dormant.
yesterday, and there was
Saw
quite a
them golfing
crowd.
Sunday, yeah.
But
Everybody wants to be the one that played the last round, I think, so. You know, well, Tim and I were talking last week, there was still snow on the ground, and there were people out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, who knows how long it'll last, we could get snow
No.
before too long.
No.
Theoretically. Theoretically, we could, so,
You know, every time you say that, it happens.
yeah.
no, when
No, when he
So-
says
No, he
we're
said
all
it's
done.
not gonna
Yeah, we're all
happen.
done, and we're gonna have room in our budget.
One time, you know, one
Well, we
time I
haven't let you
opened up my
forget it.
big mouth.
Yeah, okay.
So, in addition to the RFP for the operation of the course, we're also drafting a request for qualifications for design services for the master development plan. So, that will also be going in, hopefully we'll send the ad in this week, it'll publish next week, 2-week publication period, and then I think it's a 2-week publication period for that too. And then begin to review qualifications. It's different from the RFP process. There's no fee involved, so you're asking just for qualifications. You're selecting on the basis of the qualifications, and then there's either a not-to-exceed fee or the fee is negotiated after a selection is made. So,
And what is the thought on, and obviously the topic came up at town meeting, of timing and creation of a,
Committee.
either if it's a building committee or a permanent building committee?
So that's, yeah, so that was the next item I want to talk about, is to start to get the word out there that we need people with a cross-section of expertise. We need, you know, technical expertise in architecture, engineering, civil design, landscape design, finance, particularly municipal finance, if we have it. I want to make it broad-based. I don't, you know, as Ken Lysiak said, you don't want to fill this up with people who have, people like us, I'll lump us all together, that have vested interests in how certain pieces of this come out. And as I said to him, I don't want, when we're designing the fire station, I don't want it to be all made up of firefighters. So this committee, the study committee, and I would expect that this would be a temporary duration committee that would do just the study. I would like that to be, I think it probably needs to be 7 people, maybe 9 people. In order to get a cross-section, there's going to be a lot of public involvement of this process, so that we can get out and hear from people what they want to see.
And it's important to note that this isn't just about a fire facility, because
Correct.
there'll be, and I think you said it at town meeting and afterwards in a newspaper interview of, you know, determinations would meet. I think it was Nancy Jones that asked, are we gonna do a combined police and fire? I think those decisions will have to be made at some
will.
point. I mean, and that this body will be a big decision maker in that,
will,
but
yeah.
the design committee. And then, so your plan is, once we get to a design that we're gonna go to town meeting, is when we would transition and create an actual building committee? And is your
Yeah.
thought a permanent building committee that would be operational during?
I think ideally it would be a permanent building committee. Yeah, because we're looking at a number of projects, and I think there's benefit to having stability and longevity in that committee. And I think some of it could be that there'd be carryover of certain individuals from the study committee that would become part of the building committee. And I think the building committee, my experience is typically that these tend to be on the smaller side, 5, give or take, people. And so it's a little bit more manageable. You want to be able to, you want people that are, especially in the building committee, people that are local, so that they can meet with the contractor on a
During the
weekly
day
or bi-weekly
sometimes, yeah.
basis during the day, so. Yeah, so it would be looking at the things you said, Brian, combined versus separate police and fire, combined versus separate community center, town hall, what the layout is, looking at other communities, what they've done. There's been a lot of chatter about Rowley. Rowley's in the middle of a
Yeah, pretty substantial,
complex.
yeah.
So, looking at places like that, looking at maybe communities that did combine police and fire a number of years ago, and they've had 10 or 15 years of experience, and they can say, yeah, this worked and this didn't work. So there,
Years
there's
ago,
a lot of legwork.
Years ago, the whole combination was driven around because a lot of dispatching was happening, and there was a way of, our dispatching is now
Yeah.
completely out of either facility, so.
No, and, the other factor is that, if you do combined, then you have a greater cost, initially, and that
Right.
presents challenges of fitting it in within our debt service, schedule, and not having a big spike.
Right.
So, it would seem to me, you look at the operational benefits, you look at, the cost, benefits and what it means to the debt service and the spikes, to that, and, so, having some people not only with, sort of the trades, architecture, civil engineering, but sort of financial
Yeah.
background, is also important.
Yeah. And that's a good point that you brought up, Costa, about the additional sort of upfront costs of a combined facility. Also, thing to keep in mind is that the first project, whether it's fire, police, and we've talked all along that it's gonna be fire, but it wouldn't matter if it was fire, police, community center. There are going to be more costs associated with the first project because you've got infrastructure to run.
Roadway parking.
You've got roadways, parking, underground utilities, septic, site lighting that is probably heavier in the first phase, or at least conduit for lighting for future phases. Things that, we don't think about and we don't think are that substantial, but they do add up, so. So we have to be careful of that and keep that in mind as we figure out what the size of the building is going to be.
And, we need, in terms of accounting, we need to know, okay, this is what, the fire station is costing, this is what the site development.
Right.
And those site development costs are for not just the fire station, but, for
Right.
other things that are being done now, because, it's, more prudent to do them now.
Right.
So that, when we go for construction funding, the number is gonna be up here, but you need to know what's the site cost, and then, this is the fire station
Right,
cost.
right. And that'll be a big part of the presentation that we have to make whenever we get to town meeting, so. As a general guideline, we use somewhere around $500 to $550 per square foot for the buildings. That seems to be kind of the going rate for municipal buildings.
Thank you, prevailing wage.
What's that?
Thank you, prevailing wage.
Yeah, and I there was I'm glad you brought that up. There was an MMA legislative breakfast the other morning. There were a number of reps and senators there, and I raised the issue of it's not just prevailing wage, but that's the biggest villain in public construction, but the whole public procurement web drives up costs 30 to 50% over what the private sector can do, and my colleague Greg Federspiel from Manchester chimed in afterwards, and they're looking at some building projects up there. It's prevailing wage, it's the filed sub-bid law, which nobody seems to know when it came into effect, but it's been around for close to 100 years, I think. It's the hamstringing of the general contractor that they can only pick from from 3 filed sub-bidders, and they may have bad experience with those sub-bidders, or they may have no experience with them. And so those things there's not necessarily a direct cost that you can put a money value to, but if you don't know a sub-bidder that you're working with, a subcontractor you're working with, and you don't know how they operate and how quickly they'll respond to your needs and to the needs of the project, GC can be sitting around waiting for the, the plumber or the electrician or whatever it happens to be. And those things add to risk and therefore add to the cost. So, there's a lot to be, to work with, and a lot of things to keep in mind as we go through this, but I think that's it. So we're gonna put the word out for committee members, get that process started. We've already been approached by a couple of people that are interested.
Yeah, same here.
And like I said, we want to keep people with a sort of built-in with a dog in the fight. Maybe not have them on the committee.
Can you draft a sort of mission statement?
Sure, yeah.
And, so that, and then, can advertise for, 7 to 9 people with the various skills that have been mentioned. If you have, time to put that together for Thursday,
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
then, we can, review it and, and approve it, and then you can, start the public process
Sure.
of soliciting, interest.
Okay,
And another plug, I think you agree with the concept, but I think having a separate website that we now use for, just, the info's gonna keep coming fast and furiously, and when proposals come and RFPs, and it'll probably make it easier for you as well to now have a site that you can post things on for bidders and.
yeah, absolutely. The RFP, any addenda that we issue, any links to, to state forms or other forms that we need, make it easy for the bidders, make it easier for the public to see what's going on, put up schedules and things like that. And I want to get to the point where when something comes in, we just put it up without even having to think about, do we put it up or do we not put it up? That was a good recommendation.
Anything else?
This is all good stuff.
All right.
Exciting.
So now we can talk about our next town meeting in May. So,
So or actually the budget,
yeah,
the budget.
well, that's all part of
All
the
part of
meeting.
it, yeah, so 5 and 6 kind of roll together. My apologies for having to step out of the meeting on Thursday.
Left hand high, level with the eye, right hand.
I'll hope that doesn't happen again. So, but Sarah and Tanya particularly, the two of them have been continuing to work on the operating and the capital budget, getting us to where we need to be. So, right now, we are in the black, even factoring in all of the supplementals. We're in the black by about $187,000 on the operating side. So we understand the concern the board has about building into costs that are going to keep repeating in future years. But we do, as I said the other night, and again I said last night at the Finance Committee, the three of us strongly support all of the supplemental requests. In the big scheme, it's roughly $75,000. In the big scheme of our total operating budget, it's a very small amount. And for the most part, and maybe in almost every case, the supplemental provides a savings or an improvement in service somewhere else with the additional hours in conservation. It allows us to reduce the DPW consultant budget. The town clerk's request, $12,000 request for hours there, really allows that department to move in the permanent record keeping that needs to happen, the archiving that needs to happen. So, and it's really similar across the board. We'll be updating everything this week and probably into the beginning of the week, but we'll send it out, give everybody a couple of days' notice. We understood the other night that we couldn't expect action based on distributing it to you at the start of the meeting. So the other thing I want to talk about is the sort of boogeyman in the room, which is Masco and the potential for a significant increase for Masco next year. The town side, as it is right now, I think we're up 3.6%. Schools are up 5.2, but you got to remember there's almost a 5% drop in Essex Tech. So elementary and Masco are both up 5.7% as it stands right now for fiscal '20. They are the lion's share of our budget. They're 2/3 of our budget, and I worry about holding the town, the municipal side, hostage because of fears, real or whether they get realized or it doesn't quite come to pass, but fears about what Masco will do next year. I think we need to be clearer with both the elementary schools and with Masco that 5 is not sustainable. 5.5 and 6 is not sustainable. 6.5 or 7.5 is definitely not sustainable. So I'm worried that the fear of Masco is putting undue pressure on the town side. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a sort of
I don't think that's different than on almost any year, and it's, and I get that it's a large portion of our budget is Masco Elementary and now Essex Tech, when before the old, now North Shore Tech. But I guess what we do know is fact is that next year we are going to have a newly negotiated and awarded transportation contract, which, unless you're living under a rock, you know is going to be substantially higher. Still the specter and the potential of the cost that will be involved with, if the two school committees, right, I guess all the school committees, including the other towns, go forward with a change in school start time at Masco, which will have an effect on costs there. And lastly, there has to be some type of contract negotiation to allow that to happen. I've got to think those three items should cause us to reflect, regardless of the, I don't want to be in fear of, the reality that we're going to be looking at a budget request next year for those two that I think are going to be higher than that 5.5 that you said is not sustainable. And then lastly, I just want to state, and I brought this up at our meeting, joint meeting last week, is there are some capital items that are absolutely making me nervous, and they may just be a slug that's sitting in there, but over the next 4 to 5 years on the elementary side, they're proposing numbers that, let's be honest, folks, are going to be significant overrides if they go to town meeting and pass, significant overrides each of those years to pay for. And those should not be discounted, but nor do I want to hold the municipal side in fear because of that. I just want to be wide open on that.
You know, with respect to Masco, you have to sort of be cognizant of the difference between a budget increase and Middleton's assessment increase. You know, this year we had an assessment increase like 5.7, 5.9%. The budget increase was less than 4%. So, you know, it's, you know, the things that impact us is the assessment, you know, increase, but that's a function of many things beyond the Masco budget increase. So, you know, I think, you know, we have to look at what's kind of the worst-case scenario of, you know, assessment increase. And, you know, sort of looking into the future, that's kind of what, you know, Sarah did, you know,
Right.
with, you know, revenues kind of, you know, as low as, you know, in some cases flat, and expenses, you know, increasing. And if we can still afford the impact of the supplementals or all our budgets in, you know, the out years, then if we can afford it in the worst case scenario, then it, you know, we can afford it in a better case scenario. And I'm not sure that, you know, in talking about the worst case scenario at Masco is really holding hostage, you know, anything, I think, because the worst case scenario is that I've put forth is, you know, and when I said, sorry, you know, look at like a 6.5%, it's highly unlikely that that assessment increase happens. But if you look at it and it still makes sense to do everything else, then, you know, when something less than that happens, because there's so many assumptions in there. So,
Yeah. No, so with the, you know, with the 5% Masco increase, we're good, well, we're good in fiscal '20 with what's already in front of us. With a 5% increase next year, we're okay. The 5% at Masco. It gets ugly when it gets to 6.5, you know, in
but,
ballpark.
yeah, but, you know, that's not, you know, a reason not to go forward with what we need to do
Correct.
on the town side.
Right.
That's just, you know, recognizing that number, you know, in generating that number, there's like 5 different assumptions that have to be made. And
Right.
each one of those is the worst case, you know, scenario.
Right.
So,
Right.
so I'm, you know, as I said at the FinCom meeting last night, I'm, you know, I'm still comfortable, you know, doing, you know, the supplementals,
Yeah.
because, you know, it's just too many worst-case scenarios that would all have to come,
Right.
both on the revenue and the expense side, you know, to, you know, put us in any
And-
difficulty.
And I don't feel that we've been held hostage on that for a couple of reasons. I think this board, and more specifically the Finance Committee as well, and town meeting over the last 3+ cycles, have made the needed investments on the municipal side that really had not happened in many of budgets. I mean, for the first time in decades, the Public Works Department got a much-needed staff increase when our roadways have increased dramatically. Our investments, multi-year investments in police and fire staffing happened during that period of time. And other investments that we made, professionalizing some of the services that we've been doing, IT and others that had always been done on the side of a desk or by hook or by crook. So I think those investments have happened, and let's not lose sight of the fact of, well, we do talk about, and I think this is more a philosophy discussion, guys, that the $75,000 is not the discussion. This is like the old joke at town meeting that you blow through millions of dollars in a vote and it happens easy, and then you fight over a $10,000 item. For me, it's not fighting over the 75. There's nothing in there, and I agree with you that you support them wholeheartedly. I support them as well. But I think we need to also have a philosophy discussion here, in that we are embarking on a significant investment in this town in our municipal infrastructure that really has, yes, we built a new school and we updated our library. This is going to be an equally as big infrastructure investment, when historically in this town, we have not done that over a regular period of time. And so we're going to be continuing, going back to the voters and the taxpayers, asking for those approvals and investments. And because we have some sailing room, and this is, I think I'm showing my philosophy and bend on this, but because we have room in the ceiling, doesn't mean that our head has to be at the ceiling.
Right.
And I want to be abundantly clear on that, because we're gonna be asking a lot of voters and taxpayers in the next couple of years. That is gonna make last Tuesday's vote look easy.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you, you know, we don't spend to the ceiling just to spend to the ceiling. But if you think that, you know, the spending, getting closer to the ceiling is worthwhile and provides, you know, a benefit, then there is a reason, you know, to support it. At the same time, even, you know, you gotta look more than just the 1 year, because, you know, it doesn't do much good, you know, to spend it, you know, this year, and then the next year have to cut something else because, you know,
Oh, I don't
we
disagree.
forgot to think
I
about
don't
the out
disagree with
years.
that, but I mean, at some point, I'd like to, we heard it, we have a new fire station coming, we've been deferring a new ladder truck for a period of time because it won't fit there. That's gonna be another big hit in addition to the building. We've got, you know, thanks to the sheriff, we're in the business of buying police cruisers again when we weren't, through a honest negotiated contract that was blown up by the sheriff. I'll say it out loud. That we're now back in budgeting for that. And we can continue to say, oh, well, we had all those great years. Well, we had a signed contract that evaporated at his decision. These are items that are now similar to the $75,000 item. They're not big ticket items, but when you put them together in the aggregate, they're becoming bigger ticket items. And quite honestly, I'd rather put some dollars in reserves than maybe spend them because we have the room now, or just continue to give us headroom. We're due for another economic downturn. I mean, we I think survived the last one pretty decently because we don't get a lot in local aid, so there wasn't a lot to be cut. But we saw effect elsewhere within the town, even in our own general revenues. I just don't want to be in the position at the same time that we've asked for and been granted significant investment by the taxpayers to be in a position that we have to spend to that. And I mean, that's my piece. I do agree on the 75,000 plus or minus on the supplemental requests, but there needs to be a understanding and a philosophy discussion around that.
And maybe on next Thursday, we'll have that.
We will. I think we will. I think there's a lot of things to discuss on next Thursday.
And I think, if I can, I think going forward from what we've managed to this point, certainly with the last two budgets, and talking about, when you talk about having increased the DPW staff, which was a bit overdue, and, you know, other adding hours here, adding hours there, I would, you know, at the risk of disappointing some of the town employees, that's, you know, I mean, it's okay to do this, you know, the supplement does look real, it fits within it as far as I can see, but I don't see all that much we're gonna need, after having managed it to this point, what, you know, all that much more we're gonna need in the terms, you know, in the ways of hiring more full-time people or anything like that for the foreseeable future.
No, I tend
I
to
fall
agree.
short of saying the F word, the freeze word, but, I mean,
No, I tend to agree with you. I think
that's it.
we've made some progress in the last few years, and it's gotten to us to, I think, a pretty good point.
And it can't be an annual because we did it last year. It can't.
Correct.
It's not the next department's
Correct.
turn to get theirs. And I appreciate, and I've said this before, that our department heads are being fully involved in the process and making recommendations on what they need, you know, and spreading wings and making that argument. And it's quite honestly our job in the finance committees and ultimately town meeting to say yes or no, rather than this is what it shall be, come hell or high water, and you don't have a say in it.
So anyways, we'll pull everything together for you, give you plenty of time to review it before next Thursday's meeting, April 4th.
So is anything else on either the warrant or the budgets?
On the, just quickly on the warrant, there's a couple of articles that we talked about last week that were not, they're not in final form yet, so we're still working on those. The Masco Capital, the dog one, and the delinquencies.
Yeah,
and,
delinquencies.
enforcement.
The council's still working on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but those should be, I would expect it will be pretty close to finished on those by next week as well.
Next Thursday? Good, okay.
Well, any new business?
Just want to thank everybody for attending the fundraiser and comedy night for the 1728. We had a great crowd, and just thank everybody that came.
Okay. And at this point, there is no need for the,
Nope.
okay. So unless someone has anything else, is there a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, we're adjourned.